So we started with the longest piece with the IDEA. We talked about 504 and ADA, and now we're going to end, this will be the quicker one, with No Child Left Behind, which was then, and now Every Student Succeeds. So the No Child Left Behind Act has not been a favorite piece of legislation for states and public school districts. Just recently, in December of 2015, President Obama signed the Every Student Succeeds Act. So let's just take a brief look at No Child Left Behind and the Every Student Succeeds. So we need to take a look at the No Child Left Behind Act. The intent of this law was to close the achievement gap between minority and low-income students and their white peers. It was supposed to level the playing field. Lawmakers wanted to see results for the amount of funds being given to the education system. It supported the idea that standards-based education reform based on the premise that setting high standards and establishing measurable goals could improve individual outcomes in education. There was an expectation for states and schools to measure the progress of all students, general education and special education students. The law mandated that states develop and implement accountability systems and standards for reading and mathematics. Schools were required to test all students annually in grades 3 through 8, and once the students were in high school, in reading and mathematics. The goal was set that all students reach proficiency in both subjects by the end of the 2013-2014 school year. Schools were required to separate the annual progress of individual subgroups of students. So they were supposed to look at the general ed students who were in general ed all day. So they were to test everybody and then break the groups apart. And so they looked at general ed students, and then they had to include all racial and ethnic groups, as well as students with disabilities, and English language learning students. Schools were required to make adequate yearly progress, so they had to test everybody, and then there were certain proficiency levels that they had to meet. And they had to include the students with disabilities and students that were not native English speakers into those proficiencies, and then the schools were given a grade. And if you didn't make the grade, you faced strict sanctions. Some articles have used the term overthrow of No Child Left Behind because this law has been up for reauthorization for years. It's been criticized for its one-size-fits-all approach, its promotion of teaching to the tests, and the harsh system of sanctions if students are not making progress. And sometimes there was even look at evaluating educators based on the progress the students in their class were making. Many didn't like the law as they felt it allowed the Department of Education to micromanage states and school districts. So that was then, and this is now. The Every Student Succeed Act was signed into law by President Obama on December 10, 2015. It replaces No Child Left Behind. And it keeps some of the things, but it modifies the provisions related to standardized tests given to students, and it shifts the law's federal accountability provision to the states. Schools will still be accountable for student performance, but the states will be able to determine how that will take place. Current comments are that schools and parents may not see many differences because many districts have had waivers from the No Child Left Behind restrictive requirements. These waivers were granted several years ago when President Obama came into office. States with waivers were allowed to set their own goals for raising achievement and come up with their own strategies for turning around struggling schools and design their own methods of measuring student progress. Tamara Heiler, the policy advisor for education, wrote that the only thing that parents are likely to notice is that their states or districts may spend time reducing the number of tests that have been scheduled over the past few years. She commented this problem, contrary to belief, was not really a federal one to start with. This is a relatively new development, the Every Student Succeeds Act, and it's going to be interesting to watch and see what happens. So now that this law has been passed, will there be a reauthorization of IDEA caused by this? So we'll have to see what happens as time moves on. Remember how slowly some things can move. So people are going to have to look at this, see kind of what the ramifications might be, and then the U.S. Department of Education will probably take a look at it and see if anything in IDEA will have to be reauthorized. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, make sure that you contact me by posting in the virtual office or emailing me.